So Final Fantasy XVI came out a few days ago, and honestly, it's been doing gangbusters, critically and commercially. Looking at Metacritic right now, the Metascore sitting at an 88 from 117 critic reviews. The user score, while initially it was pretty low, eventually, once people started playing the game and more people started reviewing it, the score got to a pretty good 8.3, and so there's a lot of love surrounding this game. At the same time, there's also a lot of feedback where, some people didn't jive with it as much because Final Fantasy XVI does deviate in some ways. It is a lot more action-focused. Past games in the series would either be turn-based or be a combination of real-time combat and those kind of RPG combat gameplay mechanics, but this game, it's all real-time combat. And then things like gear equipment and RPG elements are very minimal. It is more linear in terms of how its levels are designed. Some of the side quests people weren't feeling in terms of how tedious they could feel. And the story, I haven't finished the game, but some people didn't like how the story ended, like it kind of falls off a little bit. But generally, there is a lot of love and a lot of positivity surrounding the game. I feel a lot of people just really loved the performance of Clive, the character from Ben Starr. A lot of people do like the combat and the gameplay and how majestic all of the set pieces are, just how epic everything is, and there's a lot of intrigue and some cool characters. So, there's a lot to love about this game, regardless of whether, this Final Fantasy is for certain players or not. And then commercially speaking, man, this game, it's selling pretty well for a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Keep in mind that this game didn't come out on any other platforms, unlike, say, Final Fantasy 15 at launch, and it is not cross-generation. It is PlayStation 5 exclusive. And last time we heard about how many PS5s have been sold and are out there was April 28th, 2023. And as of that date, the total sales of the console was 38.4 million. Roughly 40 million is a good estimate. So when you consider all of these factors, the fact that Final Fantasy XVI, as a PS5 exclusive, managed to sell over 3 million copies during its launch week within the first 6 days is actually pretty damn impressive. That actually makes Final Fantasy XVI the fastest selling PlayStation 5 exclusive ever, while you do have stats for games like God of War Ragnarok that sold 5.1 million units in roughly the same time period. Keep in mind that God of War Ragnarok came out on PlayStation 4 as well, which had an install base of over 100 million players plus the PlayStation 5 install base. So the fact that Final Fantasy XVI managed to sell 3 million copies under its circumstances speaks to just how well this game will likely end up selling once it goes multi-platform, which is bound to happen once whatever exclusivity deal Square Enix worked out with Sony is over. So it's trending really well so far, which is great. The fact that it managed to match Final Fantasy VII Remake numbers with a smaller install base, or the fact that it managed to, get close to some of these major games like Spider-Man, the first God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, these major IPs, it speaks to just how well known the Final Fantasy IP is and how well the demo did when it comes to marketing the game. That demo, I think, probably sold a lot of pre-orders. It's probably what convinced a lot of people who were on the fence to be like, all right, let's pull the trigger on Final Fantasy XVI. That demo, I think, was a demonstration for the best kind of marketing you can put out there, just letting the game speak for itself and let positive word-of-mouth spread if you're confident in your product. Now, all of that's great, but there is one aspect of the game that I feel I should talk about as a PSA for PlayStation 5 owners who might be concerned about their console overheating and crashing. This has never happened to me before, and unless I missed something, I don't remember any other game seeing PlayStation 5s crash and overheat like Final Fantasy XVI has been doing consistently enough across certain users. Signs of this happening were hinted at when Susie Hunter, who got a review copy for the game, tweeted out the following back in June 19th, 2023, before the review embargo lifted, before the Final Fantasy XVI came out. I'm playing a game that isn't out yet, where a boss fight made my PS5 overheat so much that it just turned off completely at the end of the fight. So if you guys plan on buying any new games in the near future for a day one PS5, make sure you clean it out thoroughly. Now, at the time, one could assume that this was either an isolated incident or that it's something that could get patched with some kind of day one patch. But post-launch, we've been seeing more reports that Final Fantasy XVI is overheating and crashing PS5 consoles completely. And it's been specifically reported that this only happens when you're utilizing the graphics mode instead of the performance mode. The graphics mode being the mode that pushes graphics and resolution to the max, but caps the frame rate at 30 frames per second. On performance mode, the frame rate is variable, and while it's not always a solid 60, it performs well enough where you get a smoother experience, and that's probably what most people went with. But for those who went with fidelity mode or graphics mode, yeah, enough people have been experiencing this hard crash and overheating of the PlayStation 5 where it can be a concern. On Reddit, you'll find a post from 5 days ago titled PS5 force shutting down without an overheating warning. Now, Susie had brought up the possibility that maybe it has to do with having to clean out dust from within the PlayStation 5, but this user reports that the PS5 is on the tabletop with lots of open space, so it's not in some crammed condition where it allowed the PS5 to overheat. There's very little dust buildup. I have never gotten any overheating warnings. I was playing in graphics mode, HDR, and when this scene played, and I'm not going to play the scene in case people haven't played this game, the fans went crazy and shut down instantly. It just happened so fast. Was this an actual overheating issue or a potential bug I just encountered? Notice how there isn't much going on in this scene. That's another thing worth noting. This overheating and crash seems to happen in a very specific cutscene in a very specific boss fight. Susie also reported at the time that it was during a boss battle where the PlayStation 5 overheated so much that it turned off completely. So given how specific this issue seems to be to Final Fantasy XVI and to this very specific cutscene and boss battle moment, I'm going to surmise that this isn't a hardware issue. This isn't a PlayStation 5 design flaw, but rather it seems to be a software flaw that could potentially get patched. All hardware have limitations in terms of how far they can be pushed, and if there's software that's poorly programmed in certain moments or certain functionalities where it causes the hardware to do unusual things, then it's possible for something to happen. So I'm going to surmise that this issue is in that sort of territory, and it's happened to more than one person. Again, Susie, then there's this Reddit user, and then there's this individual right here. This happened to me last night in the exact same spot. And then there's somebody else here who played in performance mode or frame rate mode. No issues so far. But you can see that a bunch of people are reporting that on this exact same spot, this happened to them. Same with this user right here. Mine shut down with overheating message on this same cutscene. So some people did get the overheating message. For others, the overheating happened so fast that the PlayStation 5 didn't have time to warn the player. And here's somebody else for whom this happened on the exact same spot and tried all kinds of ways to try to see if they could get past this cutscene and boss battle without the PlayStation 5 crashing, but to no avail. This just keeps happening no matter what they try. So for some people who are continuously experiencing this, it can be a game-breaking bug. It's literally stopping them from progressing through the game. On Twitter, you'll find a number of users also reporting similar things. Here's Adrian Liu, who said, experienced first ever overheat shutdown from my launch day PS5 while playing Final Fantasy XVI. Happened during this cutscene. Few others experienced the same issue. Apparently, only graphics mode is affected. Here's Allison Pino. Same scene. Still waiting for a statement from Square regarding the overheating issues. Bought a new PS5, but I still haven't had the courage to test the game on the new device. I think I'm traumatized. Some people are scared that this might damage their console, and that's in part why I'm making a video about this. I'm making sure that people are warned in case they fear that this overheating might result in your PlayStation 5 not being functional. While hardware like this tends to be pretty resistant, you never know what can happen when issues like these arise. So just be careful is what I'm saying. But yeah, plenty of people are assuming that it is a Final Fantasy XVI specific issue. A small cutscene like this should never overheat a PlayStation 5, says this user, and I agree on that front. Now, while the running theory was that only graphics mode causes this, it seems as though there are a handful of reports of performance mode not being able to mitigate this issue. Allison Pino actually tweeted here that in both modes the console turned off during this cutscene, but the first time it happened was during performance 60 FPS mode. So I guess experiences vary from person to person, but for some, switching to performance mode may not fix this issue. And you can see right here footage of exactly what this looks like. The cutscenes playing on the PlayStation 5 just straight up turns off like the plug was pulled from it. And boom, there it is. And if I turn on the volume on this video, you can actually hear the fans ramp up significantly.
One thing, we want to be good.
So that's the issue that some of you might experience if you're among the unfortunate. who are afflicted by this. And this user also insists that it's not a dust issue. My PS5 is not full of dust. That's not the reason why it's overheating. It clearly is some kind of software issue that is causing the hardware to behave unusually. And looking back even further before the game came out, there are reports of the Final Fantasy XVI demo causing similar crashes as well from more than 2 weeks ago. So here's a Reddit post that reads, Final Fantasy XVI demo crashes PlayStation 5. I've tried everything from reinstalling the game to cleaning the PS5 of all dust to no success. Even rebuilt database, the game crashes right after confirming the settings. Tried both performance and graphics mode. You can see right here that a number of people have experienced something similar with the demo. So yeah, this is an unusual circumstance. This has not happened with any other game. But then again, Final Fantasy XVI is one of the few true PlayStation 5 exclusives that really pushes the PS5 hardware. So I've got to wonder if the game is just pushing the PlayStation 5 too much with how much graphics it's trying to get out there. But again, because this issue seems to be so specific to certain moments in the game, I get the sense that this can be patched. So hopefully this is an issue that Square Enix will address and put a patch out and make that public. Let it be known when this issue is fixed so that people will feel safe about their PlayStation 5 console, and also so that people who are stuck in the particular cutscenes or areas of the game where this crash happens will actually be able to progress through the game and beat it, because for some, the issue is bad enough where there is no solution to this. That exact same spot just always results in overheating and crashing. So yeah, this is a pretty urgent issue, and hopefully one that can be looked into, learned from, and not be repeated with future game releases. For now, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the Final Fantasy XVI experience, and whether something like this has happened to you specifically if you bought and played the game. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.